There's some new reporting out on a woman who is now a top contender for a potential Supreme Court nomination. This is Michelle Childs. She is the choice of Jim Clyburn, who we know has a lot of sway with this administration. There's sort of an unholy alliance of Jim Clyburn and Lindsey Graham, who are pushing Michelle Childs. We've previously brought to you how her early career was spent working for this union-busting law firm, where she also was on the management side of a lot of civil rights and discrimination cases. Now we're getting new reports about her time as a judge. Let's go ahead and put this tear sheet up on the screen. This is from the American Prospect. Apparently, shortly before she was nominated by Barack Obama to head to the U.S. District Court, she sentenced a man to 12 years in prison for selling 8 ounces of weed. 12 years in prison for 8 ounces of weed. The man's name is Willie Goodwin. After hearing the prosecution's argument, she sentenced him to 12 years because it was a non-parolable third strike offense. That meant that Mr. Goodwin was compelled to serve a minimum of 85% of that sentence, locked up with violent offenders, 10 plus years of hard time, regardless of good behavior. The quote from Mr. Goodwin, he said, "I had more time than people in there who killed somebody. It was crazy for bullcrap. They had me sleeping next to murderers on a weed charge, and they were going home before me. For what I had, man, it was crazy. I lost my family. I had a daughter and couldn't take care of her." And by the way, highly significant that this decision came just before she's nominated to federal district court by Barack Obama. Politics of criminal justice reform were way different back then. That was still in
2009. It was different.
Still, when it was seen as like being tough on crime was the way to get ahead. So she throws the book at this man, and he says, Mr. Goodwin says, Childs was shooting for that seat, trying to make an example out of me, didn't care what kind of lives she destroyed. So this is now a top contender put up to potentially be on the Supreme Court. There was a giant puff piece about her in the New York Times. Seems to me that the case is really building in her favor, especially with the potential bipartisan support. And it's just a perfect example of how damaging hollow identity politics ultimately are, where, she checks the boxes of being a Black woman. And so all of this record, which is completely at odds with what the Biden administration claims to stand for, is just completely disregarded.
Yeah, and as you point to, she's still very likely to get the tap, right? Like she's getting all the hagiographic profiles. Clyburn is pushing her because she's from South Carolina. She critically has, if you have the Lindsey Graham support, that would put you at a 51, and then Kamala Harris wouldn't even have to vote in order for the tie break. So there's a lot of support behind this. And I mean, the egregious part on those union cases, it was so recent that she was repping, the management in a lot of these things, contrary to a lot of her social justice talk and a lot of talk from Clyburn and all those people as well, as addition to her very clear. What I think this shows me, especially given that she was up for a promotion right after this, is that she's willing to go along with the tides and rule whichever that way. Yeah. And at that time, this was where it was. And specifically on the union side, then she's trying to make more money. So you have a outright corporatist. I mean, look, it's not like Stephen Breyer was a godsend, on labor or whatever.
It wasn't.
So it would simply be continuing that legacy, as well as RBG and many of the right wingers on the court as well. But it just does show you how hollow this is. And nobody outside of the prospect, nobody is doing any serious journalism on this.
Yeah.
Compare that to the right wing. By the way, I'm fine. You want to scrutinize the hell out of people's records before they get on the Supreme Court. I'm 100% for it, but I don't see any of this whenever it comes to Michelle Childs.
Yeah, kudos to Alexander Salmon, who wrote up this piece and, did a great job interviewing Willie Roy Goodwin and getting those quotes as well. But, this is why woke corporatism is such an incredible threat.
Right.
Because, it's going to be very hard. There was a quote from Politico about Sherrod Brown, who, is typically a consistent ally of labor and of the union movement. And even he was saying he would go along with this.
Yeah.
Because you have, on the one hand, if you resist voting for the black woman to the historic black woman to the Supreme Court,
in the media.
You know the way you're going to be attacked. You know the way they're going to come after you and say that you're racist and you're evil and you're sexist and all of these things. So you have that against you. I think the progressive, quote unquote, groups that were interviewed said basically like, well, we don't want to cause a problem for Joe Biden on this. A problem for Joe Biden? What about the problem for all the people who would be subject, to the whims of whatever the Supreme Court decides ultimately? I mean, that just, again, is completely bananas to me. But with this woke corporatism, people get to have the illusion of progress. Oh, we're the illusion of, moving forward, and the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And meanwhile, you're just putting in someone who has the same terrible views as a lot of the people that are already sitting on the court. So it only is a politics of like personal fulfillment and individual achievement versus something that would actually benefit the entire population. So great reporting on this. Sentenced a man to 12 years for selling 8 ounces of weed. And this is now a top contender for Biden's pick for Supreme Court. We will stay on it. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll have more for you later. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.